Like, I wonder if that happens. Do you know anybody who sucks? It's probably somebody who would say that behind my back. I don't think they would say it to my face, particularly if I had their dick in my mouth at the time. I haven't had many complaints about my dick sucking ability. Hello, my name is Kropo, and in addition to making videos to try not to work call centers anymore, I refrained from licking flagpoles during the Texas freeze. I feel good about myself, and that little segue is going to be some foreshadowing of some stuff that's going to come on later in the video. Now, given that we've had protests in the last year and the total collapse of infrastructure due to corrupt corporations, greed, and malice in the last month, at least in Texas, let's dip into the PlayStation 2 classic, State of Emergency. Now, full disclosure, I haven't played it in about 5 years or so, and when I couldn't find my copy in a rat's nest of an apartment, I decided to watch some gameplay footage instead, because while the setting and gimmick are killer, it's best enjoyed as a cultural artifact rather than an actual game. Indeed, the PlayStation 2 era was a turning point. Up until then, home consoles were often trying to be on par with the arcades, and it was only around the PlayStation 2 when home consoles eclipsed the arcade and became the main market for video games that they focused on and were made for. And with this era, you get some gems that have like the wonderful feel of the arcade era while adding the vestiges that will grow and become entire genres within themselves. You also have games that combine the annoyance of a quarter eater and bolt on things that have become slurs in the gaming discourse, like fetch quests and escort missions, rather ungangly gameplay elements that didn't age well, becoming the nuts and bolts of what comprises the game. Far better to talk about this game in contrast to the world we live now. Children born the year it came out spent the last summer burning down police stations in a Midwest Bastille. And we can look at it now in the rise of the corporate oligarchy that it predicted, as well as the riots. We can see the slapstick violence and cumbersome gameplay of 20 years ago contrasted with the real thing. And with State of Emergency, we can see one of the crucial flaws of video games as an art form right now. And that's that video games are a young art form. A third of the age of movies, which started from recording vaudeville slapstick to now being a technical pinnacle, with decades-spanning franchises and entire armies of workers with generations of trade knowledge. And video games represent that now in terms of economic and logistical scale, if not for the longevity. See, the thing about film as a medium is that there's a direct line to it from live theater. It's a logical conclusion of a number of different stagecrafts and genre that span thousands of years. There's a language of theater and a language of film, and they're very similar. And the thing about video games is it doesn't quite have that yet. It takes bits and pieces from movies and theater, but there hasn't really been an art form that had the combination of interaction and mass production that video games have now. You aren't passive in games like you are in movies, unless of course you're playing a game by Square, and I think that ragging on Squaresoft games is going to be my thing until my boyfriend actually convinces me to play Final Fantasy Online. At that point I will collapse under my own hypocrisy. Except not really, since being a hypocrite is more of a survival trait than a flaw. But the simple fact of the matter is that video games, by way of being an interactive medium, has to build its own techniques and symbolism, its own language, and a compelling setting and venue like a corporate oligarchy taking over the United States in 2023 and a nationwide riot overthrowing that oligarchy in 2035 can have decent graphics and pointed commentary, funny scenes like, oh, attention shoppers, public executions are about to start, but it's crippled if it relies on bad mechanics like escort missions. And that's a limitation of the medium that only time can fill. Just like film is a combination of millions of tradespeople honing and passing their skills for generations. Though to be fair with video games, it's a lot more of a smaller timeline. And that's kind of a miracle of technology. The advantage that games have is that experimentation and discovering and training is easier now than ever before. Anyone can hop on Unity and tinker with making games, for better or worse. And the things that we try with and succeed with will likely echo for generations as well, and that's interesting. It's a new frontier. But let's get back to this game in particular. and how it seems to be a totem of ill fate. Looking at it now, one is kind of inclined to hail it as a prophet, but it has too much of that late 90s, early 2000 edge to fill that role, and we all know where that eventually led. And, due to it not being a good game, it can't even be enjoyed ironically like a movie can. Its disconnect from the future being as off-kilter in its gameplay as it is to taste, and perhaps that's a good thing. You see, video games, in their current form, often rely on catharsis by giving an illusion of agency, and that's their main selling point. And if State of Emergency was good, I suspect I would hate it. I would absolutely despise it for that illusion. See, one of the things of the freeze was, I was lucky enough to get a place with power and heat and water. And I was warm and having cups of tea with my family, while group chats I was in were abuzz with people suffering, my friends freezing, unsure of what to do, left to die by the people who claim to know better than us, having to rely on the ineptitude of city officials who, despite having days, if not weeks to plan, only had one warming shelter the day all the power went out, and they didn't even have the right phone number for evacuation. They weren't even giving it out until the first day ended of everyone not having power. Then to be insulted by our governor gaslighting us about windmills, finding out our slimiest senator abandoning us and his dog, and our former governor bargaining our lives for the privilege of spending billions more for a shittier power grid, to feel that helpless. Helpless to stop your friends from being hurt, to stop the people who put you there from lying about it, to stop them gleefully pledging your life for their personal gain. I don't think that a PlayStation 2 game could quite encapsulate the joy and catharsis of breaking from that helplessness and burning to the ground everything that those people who put you there loved. And to have the spirit of that diluted with clunky, obsolete gameplay is why I don't recommend playing State of Emergency.